Okay.
Hello. Today we're looking at The Scream by Edvard Munch.
It is one of the most known and familiar pieces of art today. It is regularly the subject of parodies and mock paintings.
A little history on Munch. As a child, he was very sickly and at many times could not attend school. So while he was at home, he kept himself busy by painting.
Yes.
He was very much inspired by his father, who taught him literature and writing. When talking about what role his father played in his life, Munch once wrote, "From him I inherited the seeds of madness. The angels of fear, sorrow, and death stood by my side since the day I was born."
Oh yes, Edvard Munch created this painting along with 3 other versions of it in 1893, 1895, and 1910.
And the first thing we notice when we look at the painting is obviously the human-like figure in the middle. The person-like figure in the painting supposedly is not Munch himself, but nature screaming at him. The figure is screaming at the audience like it's being oppressed in some way, like it's in some kind of anguish. Many people have actually interpreted it as a universal symbol of anxiety or distress. For me personally, when I look at this figure, it sort of evokes feelings of fear or maybe sorrow.
And actually, if you look at the colors of the painting, they kind of divide themselves and almost seem like, in a way, they're conflicting with each other.
Yes, you're right. Also, the curves depict a sort of unstableness. The only stable thing we see in the painting is the bridge. Most of the entire painting seems like it's moving in an awkward way, almost like it's flowing in different directions. And the story behind the painting is very strange. While on a walk with friends, he started to feel tired, and fear came over him when he looked out and heard what he calls the scream of nature.
Yes. And from what I've read, he said that during the time he was painting the Scream, he actually almost went mad. Isn't that insane?
Very. I've read that too. He even said once, and I quote, "I was stretched to the limit. Nature was screaming in my blood. After that, I gave up any hope of ever being able to love again." But despite his dark feelings behind the painting, this will always be his masterpiece.
The fact that it was one of the most famous paintings of all time is already a success in itself. But another remarkable feat was the fact that it was sold for $119,922,500.
It's a lot of money, Brandon.
It's a very high amount of money.
So, Brandon, what do we have here?
Now we are looking at The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living by the artist Damien Hirst.
Who is Damien Hirst, Brandon?
Good question. Well, Damien Hirst was born on June 7th, 1965 in Bristol. He had a strange childhood in that his mother was very strict over his teenage rebellion years because, well, she destroyed anything that represented any form of rebellion, such as pants that had zippers on the legs, or she even melted some of his rock records. And well, what got him into art was that he excelled in his art classes in grade school, and he later went on to join the YBA, or Young British Artists, to go further into the art world.
Interesting. Now, let's go on to the painting.
So, this painting is called The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living. The painting was created in 1991, and it features a 14-foot tiger shark.
Oh, it almost seems like it's floating.
Yes, indeed it does, because it is shown suspended in a 5% formaldehyde solution.
So what is the meaning the artist is trying to portray here?
Well, according to the artist, the title was just a statement he had used to describe the idea of death to himself. And in another book, in Ron Broglio's Surface Encounters, he states, "The shark's jaws are open as if to emulate the sublimity and fear invoked by the fictional pop icon film, Jaws." But on a personal level, I think it could represent how death could approach at any time, and the shark represents death itself and how it is right there and could strike at any given moment. When looking at it from different angles, it could give a plethora of different meanings based on perspective, such as when looking at it from behind, it could be a close call with death, and when looking at it head on, it could mean you are close to death, and at any given moment, you could get yourself killed. It also shows the fragileness of life and that the shark itself decayed over time and actually had to be replaced.
Quite frightening, quite. But weren't there some controversies this may have caused in terms of if this was considered art?
Yes. In fact, in 2003 at the Stockism International Art Gallery, they had a giant shark with the title, "A Dead Shark Isn't Art," to kind of bash Hirst and to make a statement that displaying an already existing animal isn't considered art.
And what do you think of all this?
Well, I don't agree with this because art comes in many shapes and forms, and if the artist himself considers it art and he has a meaning behind it, I consider it to be art. I mean, look at artists like Duchamp. He's a very famous artist and he put on display a urinal. Overall, this is a very deep piece because it is a shark. Get it? And sharks swim in the deep.
You clever wanker.
But on the real, I mean, it has a very deep meaning, and it's up to the audience to decide on what it means to them. Thank you. Okay.